Hi, and welcome everyone. I'm Kristine Fisher, your host of this edition of Cape Ann ARTWaves, coming to you by way of 1623 Studios located in Gloucester, Massachusetts. Creating art is in the DNA of my guest today. I'm very excited to welcome the passionate painter, mentor, and advisor, Loren Doucette, who's been painting on Cape Ann since 2000 and showing her work widely since 2006, with a terrific following of collectors and colleagues.
Thank you.
Program, you look terrific.
Thanks, Kristine. So do you.
I love all the art in the background. Let's use this as a jumping off point. Why don't you share with us a little bit about your early beginnings in your journey and some of the folks that have really influenced you in your work?
I've had so many wonderful influences.
Yeah.
So I came to Gloucester from Woburn. I grew up in Woburn, Mass.
Mm-hmm.
And I came to Gloucester first when I was 18 years old, just because I heard everyone was, really invested in painting up here.
Yep.
And they weren't in Woburn. So I wanted to see what it was all about.
Right.
So I came up here, brought my paints, my backpack, and, I painted and I saw all the enthusiasm for what I was doing, what all the galleries were doing. I saw Jill Demery's work, and really it blew me away because it was a different take on the nautical landscape.
Mm-hmm.
There was a freedom in it that I never saw before, and I never forgot that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Jill has a very unique style.
Yeah,
and still does.
She does.
And
still.
Does. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So I knew right from that moment that I wanted to make art my career.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't move up here. I then went to art school. I went to Salem State University and studied art, and then to the School for the Museum of Fine Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in love with it. And
Right.
I didn't move up here until 2000 with my son when he was 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I moved up here to be part of the art scene, to be part of the community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You really felt the culture here.
Right? And the landscape. The landscape called me.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, the beauty of Cape Ann, the endless beauty of Cape Ann.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us a little bit about your year in 2006, because you went through quite a transformation. You came to Cape Ann, and you wanted to, you leaned into painting in a more representational style. And then
I thought,
through a period of transformation. Talk to us a little bit about that. I think that's an important point in your evolution as an artist.
Thank you. I thought that in order to be accepted as an artist on Cape Ann, not knowing anybody, I just thought I needed to paint realistic landscapes of the beauty.
Sure.
And so I was trying to do that from photographs that I took. Mm-hmm. And I was teaching, watercolor based on photographs. And in 2006, I was showing here and there and just got so dissatisfied with my work that I was at a complete standstill. I didn't want to show it. I didn't even want to paint it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I tried to, I expressed that to Kate Seidman, who introduced me to Ruth Mordecai. Mm-hmm. And when I saw Ruth's work, it was so alive, and her line was so energetic that I knew that that's the kind of help that I needed. Mm-hmm. And she pointed me in the direction of Montserrat College of Art. Mm-hmm. And she said, Lauren, study with Judy Brown and Tim Harney. And I did. I took her advice and I went full force into a 6-year study mostly with Tim Harney. Mm-hmm. And it was incredible. It was absolutely transformative what he showed me based on the search for the search method and how to search and find fullness of form, whether it's a portrait, a landscape, or a figure. It didn't matter. And my foundation for drawing became so rich. And I just knew that I had found something that I could build on for my lifetime
Right.
with art.
Right. Well, it sounded to me like Timothy really helped you trust your own creative process and lean into it, right?
Well, he showed me the tools that I didn't yet have on how to really feel forms in my way.
Right.
And so, yeah, that's true.
Talk to us a
Yeah.
little bit about some of the other artists that Timothy introduced you to who have influenced your art as well.
That I am so grateful for. He introduced me to painters and art history that I still draw from and always will. And I didn't know who they were before. The Bay Area figure painters, Richard Diebenkorn, Joan Brown, the real direct approach to applying the paint. Stuart Davis, how he used the Cape Ann landscape in a whimsical way and synthesized all the information into abstraction. Marsden Hartley, Helen Frankenthaler, Joseph Salmon, to name a few.
Yeah, well, that's a rich group that you've got there, several of which, of course, have painted on Cape Ann, right?
Yeah.
That's a good jumping off point, Loren. Let's talk about a couple of pieces. I'm sure our listeners can't wait to dive into your work. You've got 3 works that we'd like to talk about in succession. So why don't we lead off with Light Yellow House in Winter, which was painted in 2013 for your senior thesis show at Montserrat College of Art.
That painting is acrylic on wood. And it's a mixture of drawing and painting. And I feel like I did a whole series about how the snow fell on my backyard in winter. On those, when I lived on Sargent Street. And it's just a really close little tight, the houses are all tight together. And it's so Gloucester. And I was studying Stuart Davis and Joseph Salmon at the time. And so they were the influence for that piece. But I understood something in that piece for the first time, how to merge drawing and painting together.
Wow, that's great. Thank you for sharing this. Let's talk about October Marsh, painted 2 years after graduation. You painted that in 2018.
Yeah. Well, I've bounced around to many studios. At that point, I was at a studio overlooking the Jones Creek, and I studied that marsh for 2 years. I don't think I'm ever done with it, by the way, but it's endlessly inspiring me. So that painting was a turning point for me as well, because I had graduated and was really, you're on your own. You have to listen to your own voice. You don't have the teachers anymore commenting or critiquing.
Right.
And
it's a different
so it was
phase.
It is. And it's deep. You have to go deep within and find what's yours again.
That is so sad.
Yeah. And so I was looking at the work of Nicholas de Stael and Timothy Harney's work, especially his backyard series from his son Andrew's room. And I was very, very curious about how realism and abstraction meet, even more so now, and how the realistic landscape could kind of teeter towards abstraction and then all of a sudden completely break into color planes that kind of float. And I feel like in October is when the yellow, the colors float.
Oh God, yeah.
And so that's what happened there. It was special.
And it's a marvelous piece. I want to talk also about the last piece in this sequence, A Lone Figure in Red. This is a very poignant piece because it really kind of set yourself up for the kind of journey that you've been on now to some degree with respect to
Yeah.
the challenge of these uncertain times.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that piece came as a big surprise, which I think is a really good thing.
Yeah.
Like all art, I've learned that you have to set the stage being willing for a surprise. Let it surprise you. And I think there was a certain openness in going into that piece, that it wasn't going to be just the same old thing. Something new had to come through. And that I allowed it that day, even though it wasn't a feeling that was beautiful. It was a feeling of loneliness and isolation. And it was like letting that come out was a big thing for me. And I wasn't looking at anything from observation for one of the first times. It was like looking inside and letting it speak. And so, so that piece just taught me how to go in, look deep within, and listen to the silent art voice and let it surprise you after you tell it all your secrets. You give it everything and let it inform you.
Oh, I love that. I love how you frame that up. When I look at that piece, I definitely feel the silence. I feel the isolation, and I think it's powerful. And I'd like to use that as a jumping off point or a transition into talking about now the last several months and how this forced pause of COVID has influenced your work and your direction.
Yeah. Well, when this all happened, I was working for Rocky Neck, and I'm ever grateful for my time there. It was just a year, but the people that I met, the network, and what I learned there was really invaluable. Yet when the pandemic started and quarantine hit, I mean, it was life-changing for all of us. And I'm so fortunate that I made art rather than stopped making art.
Yes.
You know,
you are fortunate, because that's not always the reaction among artists that I've had the fortune to interview.
Yep. So it almost triggered a furious art making practice because it felt like all I had at the time. You know, I couldn't hug the ones I loved, and I couldn't even see them. And it was like, well, I have my art and I'm going to use it. Yeah.
And indeed you have.
Yeah. And so I really listened inside, and I knew that I needed to make something, because what was going on was so monumentally big. I needed to make a piece that was bigger than I ever had before. So I put a piece of linen on the wall that was 70 inches by 80 inches. And I had never worked that large before, but always wanted to. And the painting was called Letter to Yellow. And I basically just told it everything, you know, and I do have such a love for this one color yellow. It's like a sunflower yellow.
Yes.
And I needed it to hold me. I needed that color to hold me. And I told it everything. And, you know, I just developed this really deep, deep connection with the work.
Yes.
And yeah.
Well, and it's such a big scale too. I mean, I really applaud your risk taking.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're always seeking growth, and I love that. I want to talk about another piece here that really leads us into what your art practice means to you. And the fifth piece is titled Endless Ode to Redon.
Redon, yeah.
Redon.
Yep.
So,
So that piece, it was just made this summer.
yes.
Um, and I sold it recently, so it lives in a beautiful home somewhere now. But what I realized was that I had to leave my position at Rocky Neck and pursue my dream of being a full-time artist, art mentor, and teacher.
Mhm.
And immediately when I made that decision, I started making that painting.
Mm.
And it was a full investment and celebration of everything I love about painting,
Mhm.
about color,
Mhm.
flowers,
Mhm.
and my favorite artist, Odilon Redon.
Mm. I have to tell you, it is a true celebration. I think that's just the right word. It is absolutely glorious,
Thank you.
really glorious. And I know that when you and I talked earlier, you mentioned something, and I'm going to quote you because I think the quote just really resonated with me. I have learned and now teach that painting for me is about stimulating the senses, loving what you love, attacking the medium, and being in full connection with the divine source of creation. I think that really sums up what your art practice means to you.
100%.
Yeah, and your words. So,
Yeah.
one thing that we cannot not cover is your process because I was so taken away how thoughtful and deliberate you are with setting up your altar. Talk to us about that. I think that's terrific.
Mm. So, one thing that I do for myself, and I teach all my students, if they don't already do it, is how to be really kind to your creativity. And that really it's about studying your creativity and how you work best.
Hmm.
And so, it's hard enough going from the outside world to inside our studios to our inner world.
Right.
I think the transition can be hard. So being kind to ourselves by, stimulating our senses, setting up our materials that we adore,
Hmm.
in a way that's sacred, like an altar.
Hmm.
I lay all my paint colors out, my brushes. Um, I put on the music that I love. I put books about the artists that I love, the images that I can't wait to paint from or that inspire me the most.
Mm.
So it's like I get myself transitioned into the zone
Mm.
where I can't help but paint because
Yeah.
I'm overflowing with passion,
Yeah. Oh, I just think this is such marvelous advice because, I've talked to many artists, as you know, and many of us have had challenges, from time to time getting into
Yeah,
a studio and picking up the brush or, whatever it
right.
is and creating. And I think this is really a wonderful, wonderful encouragement of really honoring yourself and honoring your art, right?
Yeah.
In your process. Now we're going to jump gears. I want to talk about classes. Talk about your classes. I know that you've kicked them up recently. Why don't you walk us through what you've been doing and how people can find you if they would like to study with you?
Sure. Well, I'm really excited to be sharing all the information that I've been given over the years because I've had amazing teachers.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful for that knowledge. And I really have a lot to share. And I love teaching as much as I love painting. It's a surprise to me, but I really do.
Mhm.
Watching people create and when the gears are starting to turn and they're finding what they love, it's amazing.
Mhm.
So I I offer Zoom mentoring if
Mhm.
that's what people are comfortable with and that's what they need. So I do phone consultations, I do in person um, private classes, I
Mhm.
do classes for 2 and 3 people at a time.
Mhm.
If it's indoor classes, there's masks. If it's and then I've been doing group classes outdoors because the weather's been nice.
Mhm.
Um, so that's what I've been doing. And if people would like to study with me, they can contact me directly.
Mhm. Excellent.
And yeah.
So let's talk about where we can find you. I'd love for you to talk about your studio in Cripple Cove
Yeah,
and how we can find you in terms of your website and Instagram, Facebook, etc.
sure. So I am at Loren Doucette Studio, which is at Cripple Cove Studios, 97 East Main Street in Gloucester. And I teach here and I show people my work here. So people can make an appointment with me. You can contact me through Facebook, Instagram, or my email. And my website is Loren Doucette Art. And people can go there and leave me a message as well. And soon there'll be, I'm looking forward to having, to create some Zoom workshops for the winter. You know, if people can't get out, just to kind of help people stay connected and making art through the winter. So, yeah, and so I'm going to have a page on my website that's more devoted to classes as well.
Excellent. That's great, Loren. Honestly, you are so terrific. Such a pleasure to talk to you. I have been
Thank
one of
you.
your big admirers, as you know, and
Thank you.
really want to thank you for sharing this time with us. For our listeners, I want to say that this program can be found on 1623 Studios platform, YouTube, and Channel 12. I'm Kristine Fisher. You've been listening to Loren Doucette. Thank you so much.
Thank you.